The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And wrestling fans, welcome back to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryan here with you, fresh off my trip from the Commonwealth Games in Australia. We'll talk about that on another episode, but today we're talking Eastern Michigan wrestling. Our guest, Professor Howard Bunsis, is a professor of accounting at Eastern Michigan University, as we talk about the cuts at Eastern Michigan to the four sports, specifically wrestling here on this program. Professor Bunsis, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, you are a professor of accounting at Eastern Michigan, and one of your previous titles was faculty representative of the NCAA, a position you held until 2005. And just so we can get an understanding of what your role is at Eastern Michigan, talk a little bit about maybe what your day-to-day situation's like and why you took such an active interest in just kind of looking at the numbers with these Eastern Michigan cuts.
Well, I'm just a garden variety accounting professor. I just teach accounting. And I've been in union. We have a faculty union here at Eastern Michigan, and I've been involved in our leadership in the past, so I'm not in union leadership right now. But I've always been someone who's spoken out when I see the administration not doing things the right way. Been doing that since I've been here. I've been here 20 years now, and when I see injustices, we speak out about them. This university is in a place right now where they're claiming they're in financial difficulty. They've been laying off employees. They stopped hiring faculty, and now they've cut sports programs that they shouldn't have cut it, and are not going to save them any money. So I just spoke out about this just as a faculty member. That's my role. I've been, like I said, I've been president of our union. I've been treasurer. I've been president of our national AAUP union. AAUP stands for American Association of University Professors, and there's about 80 collective bargaining chapters around the country, including one at Rider University, by the way, which I know has a very strong wrestling program, Division I wrestling program. And so I've certainly been involved in athletics. When I was faculty rep, I went to every home meet that we had for a couple of years when I was faculty rep. Certainly went to every meet and loved the sport and have great respect for what the students who participate in that sport do and the dedication it takes.
I know from the world of finances and the way universities and colleges are, some of them are shutting down. I mean, we've had small schools around the country close up. We've also had some more reputable programs and schools have trouble attracting students. And one thing that these smaller schools especially have done to attract students is start men's programs, especially where there's situations where, women are attending college in greater numbers than men. And to get male enrollment, they're adding sports like wrestling. In the case, we've seen 197 men's and women's teams added since the turn of the century. And there's sometimes a split between academics and athletics in terms of the thought process of where the money should go. I know where I went to school at Old Dominion, there was a question about when they added football. Well, why aren't we spending more money on academics? I mean, this is a research institution, blah, blah, blah. But what is your perspective on the balance between what athletics means to a university and how that can help the academic side and vice versa?
Sure. Well, first, let me preface by saying I'm a huge sports fan. My favorite team is the New York Mets. I'm a native New Yorker. Live here in Michigan, and the Mets lost I'm not over last night's loss. We got 6 runs in the 8th inning, but if I could throw that in there, it was just unbelievable. Just what a nightmare. Well, which is why, by the way, I'm a union guy and always fighting in the losing battles because that's just who I am. I think always fighting, always tilting against windmills. If you want to know who I really am, that's really what everything's about. But I firmly believe in athletics and what it brings: dedication, teamwork, discipline, working for each other, working together for a common goal. I believe in everything that sports does. I played sports my whole life. Right now I'm coaching. I'm a Special Olympics coach. We have 2 special needs kids at home, and I've been coaching Special Olympics for a while now, and just have great respect for what sports does and believe it adds a lot to a college campus. Our problem here at Eastern Michigan is the spending on sports, and the big sport is football. And my position and our position is that we should remain Division I in every sport but football. And the whole Mid-American Conference subsidizes, basically subsidizes, gets subsidies from the academic side to the tune of tens of millions of dollars every year, almost $20 million a school. And that's just too much. And sports like wrestling, here at Eastern Michigan, they have 9 scholarships in wrestling at Eastern, and they have about 26 young men that participate. Those kids, the majority of those kids pay their own way to go to school here. But you just prefaced your question with the schools are starting wrestling programs. Why? Because they bring money in. That's why they're starting them. And here at Eastern Michigan, the cost of the wrestling program, travel, coaches, recruiting, are minimal. They're tiny, and they're equal. And so that's why cutting wrestling at Eastern Michigan is going to cost this university money because of the lost tuition revenue. And it made no sense to do it. Now, let me talk about the mistake that was made.
The honest mistake. Let's get that right. An honest mistake.
Let's just use the word mistake. You can use whatever word you want. I'll just say mistake. In January, every year, every university's got to submit what's called an NCAA management report, where they detail all the revenues and all the expense of every individual sport and everything having to do with athletics. And so when they cut the sports about a month ago, we got the NCAA management report, went through it, and I flagged, literally with color coded in my spreadsheet, this $292,000 cost for game expenses for wrestling. And I said, this just can't be true. And it turns out that almost all of that money was really an expense of football that was put in the wrestling column. And the real game expenses, they claim, were $12,000, which, by the way, seemed really high because I've been to meets. I've been to a lot of wrestling meets. Yeah, you got to pay the officials. But I don't know how it works at where you are or other Division I programs. But I can tell you this, at our place here at Eastern Michigan, the kids get the mats, roll them down, get the folding chairs, set them all up. I don't know if that's common. If that's the way it typically is, you could tell me if that's the way it typically works. But my point is, the game expenses, the expenses to put a meet on at home, are minimal. And I don't even know how they get to $12,000, much less $292,000. And when you take away the $292,000 and they made it $12,000, that's how cutting all 4 sports as in total is actually a cost to this university of $61,000. Both wrestling and men's swimming are negative decisions to the university. What I mean by that is cutting wrestling and cutting men's swimming is going to cost the university money because these kids aren't going to go to school here. And I met one of my favorite former accounting students last night who was at the rally, who still lives in the area. And he told me what happened with him when he came here as a first-year student. He was getting hardly any money. So what happens is he got more money as he progressed based on 2 things: performance academically and performance athletically. So they've only got 9 scholarships to give. You know the way wrestling works, only 10 compete at a time, but you have to have at least 20 on it. I mean, you have to have, most Division I programs, I believe, have at least 20 kids. You could tell me if that sounds right. Some of them probably have close to 30, but most, I assume, have between 20 and 30 kids like we do here. Those kids are paying their own way. Not every kid paying 100% of their own way, but on average, in wrestling, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the kids are paying their own way to go to school here. And you cut Division I wrestling, those kids aren't coming here. They're going somewhere else. You mentioned all these. They're going to go to another school. And are they going to be replaced by other students who want to come into Eastern Michigan? Absolutely not. You know why? We don't have a wait list. We don't turn anybody away. When these kids who wrestle here and pay their own way don't come here, no one's replacing them. Those dollars are lost forever. And our administration, all they saw was, oh, we have a coach. We could not pay him. We have some. And by the way, the budget for wrestling, it's barely even $100,000. There's no money there. There's just no money. They don't. It's not like the recruiting budget is hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no money in wrestling. There's just none. And it doesn't make any sense that this happened. I mean, it's all political, of course, as to why it happened. And I think we know we've been putting a lot of pressure on them to cut athletics. So what do they decide to do? They decide to cut football. I mean, not cut football, but cut the sport that's really leading, causing all the problems. They decide to cut sports that mean don't do anything and have no effect at all on the bottom line here at Eastern Michigan. So a tremendous mistake in what they did. And I just don't understand why it was done, other than to think maybe if we do this, people will stop complaining about athletics, which makes no sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense. But it was done, and now our goal, if I may, is to try to convince the administration that this was the wrong decision. Let's do something about it. Let's undo this. Let's not cut these sports that cost us basically nothing. Why are we doing this? Wrestling, it just, if I could be precise with wrestling, they have travel costs of $60,000, equipment costs of 20 something grand, recruiting costs of 11 grand. And that's about it. They have the two coaches together don't even make, or the three coaches to get all three of them together to benefits and salary don't even make $200,000. And so they're losing almost $200,000 in tuition revenue. Wrestling also gets contributions that people give. They have some camps that they run. They have some revenue they lost. They get about $100,000 from the NCAA for having a Division I program. That goes away. So the point is, between the NCAA money, the contributions that are made to wrestling by former alums, and the foregone tuition revenue, it's about $340,000 of revenue they're losing. And the expenses are much less than that. The expenses are about $330,000. So why do it? It's a wash. At best, it's a wash. And I even understated the tuition revenue foregone. I had the kids not taking full loads. I had them taking low-level courses. I had them all being in-state students. It's not even a close call. Cutting wrestling at Eastern Michigan, I definitively say, is not going to save this university any money, and it's going to cost us money. And that goes beyond all the reputational and other effects, second-order effects that cutting a sport like wrestling has. Because the kids who wrestle, like Drew Lesko I saw last night, these kids, they connect with the program, they connect with the university as alums, and the benefits of that are gone forever. And it just doesn't make any sense.
I want to spin this back a little bit to the actual money part of it, because I'm not a math guy. I'm a stats guy, okay, but I'm not a math guy. So
I'll slow it down for you if you want. I can go through it again. You want me to go through it again?
No, it's the question about the budgets, because we always hear that the point is you say the school's going to lose money, and then the athletic department saying, well, our budget, and it seems like there's always this disconnect between the money being brought into the university in tuition and then the athletic budget. It seems like, well, we don't count that as part of the athletic budget. So why is the athletic department, in your viewpoint, saying that they're going to save $2.4 million, and nowhere does it seem that anywhere that a student tuition is factored into the athletic budget? Obviously, it's going into the greater student body, but why does athletics not consider that revenue?
They don't, and they don't care. Because all this university, they make decisions. They don't believe revenue. I teach accounting. And you don't have to be an accountant to know there's two things on an income statement. There's revenues and expenses. All they see are expenses. They completely ignore revenue in every decision they ever make here. They don't believe revenues exist or matter. The $2.4 million in savings is completely erroneous and made up. First of all, about half of it is scholarships. Scholarships are not real cash costs. What's a real cash cost? When the coach doesn't work here anymore, that's a cash saving. The travel expenses, those are cash savings. But if you have these 9 scholarships in wrestling that you no longer give, what's a scholarship? That means kids come here and don't have to pay tuition, foregone tuition. It's not cash. The university's not saving any cash by not having 9 scholarships. And it's not like they're going to give these 9 scholarships to other students. They're not. And it's not like any student is taking their place. So the $2.4 million, first of all, the scholarship part of it is just complete. It's all funny money. It's all internal and funny money. It's not real cash. Secondly, they stated that the athletic director stated in a recent article in Inside Higher Ed that a good part of the savings was future facility costs that they're not going to have to spend. He claimed that they were going to build a new facility for wrestling, and therefore that savings is part of the $2.4 million. That doesn't pass the last giggle or smell test. There is no way on this God's green earth that they were going to build a new facility for wrestling. Not a chance they were going to do that. Now, if someone wanted to donate it or the state was going to pay for it, neither of which is going to happen, they'd build one. There was no way they were ever going to build one. So the $2.4 million is made up of scholarship money that's funny money, future savings from facilities that they were never going to build, and a complete omitting of any lost tuition revenue. So it's a completely false number, and that number that's been repeated in the press over and over again. But hopefully, people will see the truth. And the truth is that 2.4 million is never going to happen. But all the athletic director sees and all he cares about is his budget. His budget has scholarships as a line item in it. His budget may have facilities costs. It probably doesn't, by the way, because he wasn't going to do it this year. But his budget has these things in it. So he thinks he's saving money. But I don't care about his budget. Budgets are funny money, and they don't tell us anything. I care about what is the cash cost or cash savings to this university. What's coming in versus what's going out. That's what matters. And in this case, cutting wrestling is going on a cash basis, going to cost this university money year after year after year.
One thing that's also being overlooked in some of this budget money, there is an endowment floating around there that the way I understand it, of course, named after late Dean Rockwell. People know about Tim and being a World War II hero and a kind of a legend there. But that also wasn't included in the income. And I understand that if that wrestling goes away, that goes to an academic statement. But it kind of leads me to believe that, okay, if you endow a sport, whether it be anybody, it seems like, okay, we can take this away, but okay, it's still going to go to academics, but it's not going to go to your sport anymore. I mean, does it seem kind of a spit in the face to, one, not include the endowment, and B, the whole point of an endowment is to endow a program?
Yeah. Here's the thing about that. I will say this: in the wrestling money, in the money that, in the NCAA management statement that I just referred to before, they have in there, if I may, and I'm going to get you the exact amount, they claim that there's contribution revenue of $27,000. Now, they have endowment income of zero. So let's talk about this. And I met Mr. Rockwell when he was alive many years ago. When I met him many years ago, I knew about this. So they had this $27,000 in contributions. I'm assuming that $27,000 was money that people just gave to wrestling. People just contribute money to the wrestling program. The endowment income of zero is puzzling to me because you have this endowment. This endowment must be spitting off some sort of income. So they have an other revenue line of $8,600. I don't think that's it. A $500,000 endowment should spit off at a minimum about $25,000 a year. That clearly was not included in this discussion, in their analysis. So it is very disheartening that the endowment was not considered, the income from the endowment was not considered, and the fact that they included $290,000 of football costs in the wrestling column. So all of this is, very disturbing at every level. But so when we get, the money part of it, I'm an accounting professor. Obviously, I look at the money. The money part of it is clear. This was not done to save money. And I think they just may be fooling themselves. Maybe they really believe it, but I still believe this is all, they are bowing to pressure to cut athletics, and they, in their budget lines and their way they do their funny money budgets, they claim this saves money. It is all made up and not real. And so the suffering, forget the university, it's these kids. To me, when you see there's nothing worse than a dream squashed. It's not like these kids are going to, wrestle in the Olympics or they're not. It doesn't matter. They want to come here. They want to compete. And by the way, I've been, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you know. We're about as good as we've ever been in wrestling right now. I don't know if you. are aware of that Eastern, we had about as good a year on the mat as we've ever had in all the years I've been here, the 20 years I've been here, for whatever that's worth. But that's not the point. I mean, whether the kid's successful or not, that's not the point. From a financial perspective, this just doesn't make sense, and from a human perspective, it doesn't make sense. From an athletic perspective, that's something maybe you and your colleagues know a little bit more about. But I just know, looking at the record and who they've beaten, they're doing better than they've ever done. And you can correct me if that's not accurate.
Third to MAC, and obviously the first All-American since '99. That was one point that we brought up a lot at the Nationals. And, of course, success, it doesn't seem like these cuts had anything to do with success, because swimming has had notable success over the course of their lifetime there at Eastern. Now, one thing that jumps out at me, too, is I actually, and then for full disclosure, I did inquire to the sports communications, inquiring for an interview for Mr. Weatherby to come on the show to kind of answer these type of questions. That was actually turned down. So, to say that we're only going one-sided on this, well, we gave Eastern Michigan the opportunity from an administrative standpoint to come on this show to answer basically these same questions, and they turned down the offer. So now we've only got Professor Bunsis' perspective on at least the money. Now, you talk about the funny money here. Here's another thing that jumps out at me is some of the facts being thrown around, and this may or may not be up your avenue, but we talk funny money. There's also funny facts, or as terms people like to use, fake news. So, well, they say that 6 schools have dropped wrestling in the MAC, and then 10 schools in the state of Michigan. Well, the last drop of a MAC sport in wrestling came 24 years ago. The previous drops came in 1982, and where 3 schools dropped: Bowling Green, Western Michigan, Ball State, and then the other one, Akron, in 81. So we've got 37 years ago, 36 years ago, and 24 years ago being framed like, oh, the MAC has been dropping wrestling. In Michigan, the schools that have dropped, again, Western in 82, Calvin, which is now a Division III school, in 83, Albion, Hope, and Kalamazoo, all D3 schools, dropped in 84. The only school that dropped wrestling that is now currently a Division I school, or actually was Division I at the time, was Western Michigan in 82. Oakland was D2 at the time. They dropped in 86. Northern Michigan dropped in 88, but they actually house a Greco-Roman program. So all these facts about the drops in Michigan are also, maybe not funny money, but they're funny math to say that, a drop that happened 24 years ago before any of these kids were even born is impactful.
I think the word is it's disingenuous. It's just clearly disingenuous. It's like the 2.4 million. It's just completely disingenuous and not true. So that's where we're at. I mean, I'm very happy to. I didn't know the history. What you just reported, I did not know, and I also didn't know about the how many schools were adding wrestling. The reason, but well, I don't know if we close the circle. But the reason these schools are adding wrestling is because they bring in tuition revenue. And that's why cutting wrestling, I mean, think about it. I mean, isn't it pretty obvious? Schools are adding wrestling because it adds tuition revenue. Therefore, cutting wrestling is going to cost you tuition revenue. Hello? It's just not that hard to figure out. But this university, the people who run this place, I can tell you from being here a long time, they never have the best interests of the university at heart. Their best interests are their own jobs and their own careers and their own salaries. I know that sounds harsh, but I've always felt that way. And they make decisions like this that really it makes you sit and wonder, what are they doing? Why would they do such a thing? That makes no sense. But it's been happening here since I've been here for 20 years. And luckily we have people from the outside now telling them how bad it is. So that's very disappointing to hear what you just. I'm glad you told me all that because I didn't know it.
Yeah, I want to make one minor correction. I actually failed to mention that Miami of Ohio actually was the last MAC school to drop. They dropped again 99. So most of these kids who are attending school were infants or weren't even born yet. Now, another point to bring up, again, we're talking about the enrollment aspect and the tuition. Rochester College in Rochester Hills, Michigan, probably about an hour from Ypsilanti, just added an NAIA wrestling program. So we have a tiny NAIA enrollment-driven school, an hour around the metro, adding wrestling when your Division I program says, no, we can't afford it. How is it justifiable to the mainstream to say, hey, look, we can't afford wrestling, yet Rochester, and a school that now nobody outside the state of Michigan's ever heard of, now they have because they're adding a wrestling program. How you look at that as an account and be like, well, they can afford it and we can't.
So in our state, like let's start. Miami, Ohio dropped it 99. Since 99, has anybody in the state added it besides the one you just mentioned, or is it all but just everyone who's had it has kept it?
Oh, give me a second, because I keep track of this stuff. So, new college wrestling teams since 2000. Let's go to the state of Michigan, and this includes all divisions. So, since 2000, we've had Olivet was dropped and then reinstated kind of the same year. So, it really kind of wasn't a real, there was no interruption in their team. Although Alma College dropped in '84. As did Adrian. They both have brought it back at the Division III level. Davenport was an NAIA school that added it. Now they're reclassifying to Division II. Henry Ford started a junior college program. Rochester and Cleary are both NAIA schools that have added it. And those are just been since 2011. So we've got two Division III schools, three NAIA schools, now four NAIA schools. So there's been 7 or 8 schools, not counting the junior colleges, that have 4-year opportunities that have opened in the state of Michigan since 2011.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Now, in the question, you talked about the, who's to blame here. So it's coming out that President Smith, who tried to drop wrestling at Northern State, his previous job before the community rallied and saved that one, he said that this was the athletic director's decision, whereas I find it hard to believe that Mr. Weatherby is a guy who originally started at Ferris State and had his sport dropped, and then he had to finish his career at Ball State. So I just wonder, like, from a common sense standpoint, maybe this is just us kind of waxing poetic in terms of we agree with each other, but you had your sport dropped as an athlete. Now you're going to do it to a bunch of kids, and there's really no justifiable reason in terms of common sense approach. How do people like this? How do people like this get hired, in your opinion?
Well, search committees here at Eastern Michigan have a reputation for being completely. I mean, most faculty we don't even want to serve anymore because they have. Whoever they're going to hire, it's always a backroom deal, and they just hire people without any input from faculty. Presidents, provosts, deans, they all get hired. They put a faculty member on there for show, but they always just go behind a closed door and hire who they want. That's the way it works around here. I do know that the president of the university stated publicly that he did not sign off on the cutting of the sports. He left it up to the AD, told the AD he needed a certain dollar amount, and he didn't care how he got there. I find that very alarming that a president of the university would not take more seriously or get more involved in a decision that affects so many lives. That is an abdication of leadership that I find completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and it's coming around that the upcoming Board of Regents vote that, according to a tweet that was posted, that was an email from the Office of President, said the budget cuts are not subject to the Board of Regents vote, and that the recommendation was from the AD approved by the president. So that's coming from the president's office, and that tweet has been circulating via the Save EMU Sports Twitter account at Save EMU Sports. So a lot of double talk, as you said, Funny Money, and anything we want to wrap up here, because I think we're kind of beating the drum again and again and again in terms of we all disagree with this. You've shown through your numbers out on the web, and again at Save EMU Sports has done a good job at collecting all that information. We're just trying to get a voice to it. But financially, what do you think the right decision is? How can this be rectified from a financial standpoint, from an accounting perspective? And how soon should President Smith and Scott Weatherby take your 340 intermediate accounting class?
Well, I haven't taught 340. I teach 340 in the summer, starting in a week or so. And
let's sign them up. Let's see if they can learn something.
I in my capstone class, which I have tonight in about an hour and a half, I do teach government accounting in there. They could certainly. The athletic director did send me an email saying he wanted to sit down with me. I said at a certain time, and I gave him a time where I could, and he never has gotten back to me. So I don't think that meeting's ever going to happen. And they're going to do what they always do. Just let it say nothing and hope it goes away. But we have to keep putting pressure on them. And the rally yesterday was nice, and we got to just keep putting pressure on them to do the right thing. And I'm not convinced that they'll ever do the right thing. I mean, we do have a rally on Friday. I'll be out there on Friday. We're going to be out there outside the board meeting, and a lot of people are trying to speak, though. Then they're restricting who could speak and for how long and all that. So I just don't think they care. I think they just want it. They want it all to go away. That's the Eastern Michigan way. They want it all to go away, And we just got to keep speaking up for what's right. And I hope we do. So, and I appreciate you and the wrestling community continuing to put the pressure, because there are good kids here. I'm telling you, there's good kids here who give their heart and soul to the sport. And there's a lot of kids that could be denied an opportunity for no good reason whatsoever. So I hope you guys continue to stand up for what's right.
Again, that rally, April 20th, 8 a.m. in front of Welsh Hall for the Board of Regents meeting. Information there, a lot of this has come from safeemusports.com, so I want to give them a tip of the cap. Again, being out here in Minnesota is not a whole lot I can do beyond just trying to spread the word and retweet things. And again, the interview request for Scott Weatherby was rejected. I again thank you for your time and educating us on how the funny money works at Eastern Michigan, and maybe some other things that are kind of pushing the needle there on why people get hired and do the jobs that they do, or the jobs that they do poorly in some people's opinions. But Professor Bunsis, I appreciate your time, and hopefully you can keep the fight rolling on there and making people aware that numbers need to match up, don't they?
I will. We'll keep standing up for what's right. I promise you that.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to mattalkonline.com.